Tom Lippincott, and welcome to another episode of Modern Jazz Noise. Today, in this episode, as promised last time, I'm going to be talking about my other Red Panda recent acquisition, the Radius. The Radius is a really cool pedal that can get a lot of really interesting sounds, but it's based, or the basis of the pedal is it's a ring modulator, but it does so much more than just that. And I'll be demonstrating that in just a minute here. So here we go. And right now I have everything on the pedal board completely off, so you're just going to hear my completely unaffected guitar tone. And that, of course, is my Conklin 8-string. You're seeing the headstock there. And it's plugged directly into a Vox-style amp sim in Logic. Okay. Here we are with the Radius, the Red Panda pedal. As promised, my other new acquisition. This one, I think in a lot of ways, is equally as cool as the Tensor. It doesn't have quite as many practical applications as the Tensor does, although I don't know, it's arguable. Anyway, I mentioned in the intro that this is ostensibly a ring modulator. It says ring modulator and frequency shifter. Now, I still am having trouble wrapping my brain around the technicalities of how ring modulation actually works. There's the carrier wave and some other wave, and apparently it mixes the pitch that you're playing with an internal oscillator pitch or something, and the way that those two pitches mix together makes this just ultra cool, crazy sounds that influence each other. Let's just hear what that sounds like real quick. Now, I'm just playing normal stuff. That's basically what I was doing, but played a chord there at the end. So basically gets you this crazy non-pitched kind of sound, but apparently it is actually pitches mixed together that are interacting with each other in weird ways. So that's basically what a ring modulator is, and the reason I wanted to get this pedal in the first place when it came out pretty, well, relatively recently. I remember when it came out, I don't know, maybe a year ago, something like that. My old delay pedal, my Eventide Time Factor, that I totally loved, and I mentioned this before on here, but the only reason it got kicked off the pedal board is the size. It's definitely a Space Hog, and I have enough of these Space Hog pedals that I considered indispensable that I'm not going to get rid of. And when I found this Alexander Rewind, I decided, okay, this does enough of the stuff that the Time Factor does that I can stand getting rid of the Time Factor. But one of the things that the Time Factor did that was so cool that I was never able to get the Rewind to do is in a certain mode, if you use reverse delay and turn the feedback up, it would get this basically. It sounded exactly like a ring modulator to me. And I would use that sometimes, during solos, like if I'm soloing in maybe a real rhythmic context. Maybe I'm doing something like... something along those lines. Some of you may have heard Wayne Krantz do this kind of thing. That's where I originally got the inspiration to want to do stuff like that, where it's almost the pitch is irrelevant. You're just creating rhythmic ideas, maybe playing along with the drummer. It can be like you're playing a rhythmic duet with the drummer, and that can sound really cool. Anyway, I would sometimes use that. Of course, the disadvantage was the delay. The other factors in the delay would go away because I was using the delay for that sound, so I wouldn't be able to have delay on it. And with this pedal, of course, I can still have my delay on if I want it and have the ring modulator on. Another thing that I used to do with the false ring modulator in the Time Factor was I would turn on a huge amount of reverb, like this, and then turn the ring modulator on and get these kind of wild outer space sounds. Just sounds like in space, no one can hear you scream. And I'd sometimes use that as like an intro to a real abstract tune, or even a regular tune. Probably not Stella by Starlight, but maybe a Neil Young tune or whatever, or Beatles tune. Anyway, and incidentally, I don't remember if I did mention this in this series before, but one of my biggest inspirations when I was younger, I'm sure I'm not the only one, I've talked to countless musicians who said the same thing, is the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix, and maybe Led Zeppelin to a certain extent, were huge influences on me. Not just the music, of course the Beatles' songwriting and everything about them was just so amazing, but also their sonic exploration, the stuff that they did from the middle 60s onward, from Rubber Soul to Revolver to Sgt. Pepper and Magical Mystery Tour, White Album and Abbey Road, all those, but maybe particularly Revolver and Sgt. Pepper, where they did so much of the super cool sonic experimentation, backwards tapes and all kinds of crazy stuff, loops, and same thing with Jimi Hendrix. And I always really had that stuff in my head and wanted to be able to replicate that in a live setting. And that's part of the reason why I've always been interested in all this stuff with these crazy psychedelic effects, is to imitate those sounds that I heard when I was a teenager and loved. So now that's the basic idea of the radius, and you can really get a lot of different sounds and textures out of the actual ring modulation. I'll just give a little demonstration here, and again, I feel like I've only just barely scratched the surface with this. I still don't 100% understand how ring modulation really works, but put on some longer reverb and a little delay. So this is the frequency. This is the tracking, positive to negative. Doesn't seem to have as dramatic of an effect, but this frequency thing. Of course, this mix all the way, that's just your dry signal, half and half. I generally, since it's such an extreme effect, I like to use it all the way wet. And then the actual ring modulation frequency shift. And this is a coarse control. It's got 3 settings. And then this is these 2 knobs here, and this stuff controls the modulation. So let's say, there it is. So I'm slowing the modulation down. So this is this triangle waveform. It's, now I've got the square waveform next. And this is just how extreme it is. This one's more like a non-linear one. It sounds like a computer from a 1960s TV show that's going crazy. That's another waveform. You see those green waveform shapes at the top. Now we get to the red. Oh, this one is a random. I guess. And then we have X positive and X negative. X negative just sounds like it's always going down, and then X positive always going up. To me, this one sounds like an old 80s video game. And we also have the step record thing, and this is another thing that I just barely am wrapping my brain around how to get it to do anything. But the idea is that you can have distinct steps that you pre-record with the rate and amount knobs, and then when you play stuff back, it'll go to the different settings that you have set for the 4 different steps that you've recorded. So let's see if I can do this. Press it and hold it, I think is how you do this. Okay, and then set it, go to the next one, set it to a different amount, maybe up here, and then I think so now it's basically like as if I was manipulating that amount knob really fast, you know, and really not continuous, but you know, like. Now it's doing it really slowly so you can really hear it, but if I speed it up, so that's pretty cool. And again, I haven't even, you know, scratched the surface of really how to control that or use it in a musical way, but it's just a cool sound to me at this point. And I don't even know how to save that as a preset at this point either, which gets me to the next subject, which is presets. So this is another cool, unexpected thing this pedal can do. Notice it says ring modulator and frequency shifter. So frequency, you know, we normally think of as pitch, but any kind of signal has a frequency, and if I put the range down to low, keep the mix all the way wet, I'll get rid of the reverb so it's real easy to hear. It's basically a tremolo now, because it's modulating the volume level, and I'm controlling the rate with the frequency knob, getting faster. If I get fast enough, it'll start to sound like ring modulation. So that's my first preset, which is basically just functioning like a tremolo. Here's with a little reverb. The next preset that I made is another tremolo, but see that little red light that came on? It's got a wave trigger, which basically, to be honest, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head how to do it now. I had to look it up, but basically how every time it receives a signal over a certain threshold, it randomly will change the frequency. And what that means is the speed of the tremolo will change. Every time you see that red light, it's going to go to a new speed. Did you hear that? It went really fast for a second. There it is fast, slow, real slow, and it's just random. So that's a pretty cool little effect that's kind of unique. I don't know too many tremolo pedals that will, do random rate changes like that. Maybe they're out there. I don't know. I'm not, super well versed on all the tremolo pedals that are around. And then we get into, if I mix in the dry signal, listen to what happens. Got basically a phase shifter. So I made another preset that's basically functions as a phase shifter. And again, I can't remember exactly whether this was purposeful or not, but notice that the speed of the modulation changes over time. It's generally pretty slow, but every once in a while it speeds way up. There we go. Almost kind of reminds me of like a Leslie cabinet, I should say, where you get that, the two different speeds that ramp up and ramp back down. So it's kind of a cool effect. And then, of course, you got the old and that's my preset for the ring modulation. I just basically screwed around with all the knobs until I found a sound that I thought was pretty, good for most stuff that I would use that for. And I can always mess with the knobs while I'm playing if I want to change the sound. So that's pretty much the Radius. Maybe not quite as deep of the different stuff that it can do as the Tensor, but what it does do is ultra cool, and I'm more than happy to give up this space on my pedal board. You may notice that what I used to have on here was a little miniature tremolo pedal. When I decided that I wanted to get some kind of a ring modulator, I thought, oh, I don't want to give up the tremolo pedal. And when I realized that this one would actually do tremolo anyway, it's like, oh, it's a twofer. If I give up my space that the tremolo pedal was in, I gain tremolo and ring modulation. And then, of course, I had to stick this tuner way up here. It's a little inconvenient to have it be horizontal instead of vertical, but I've gotten used to it. Okay, now I'll play you out with playing a little bit around with the Radius and the Tensor and the microcosm all together and see what that kind of sounds like. That's going to do it for this episode of Modern Jazz Noise. I hope you've enjoyed getting to know the radius pedal a little bit and some of the things that I've been using it for. And I've just barely scratched the surface of what's possible with this pedal. So I don't pretend to have explored all of the possibilities with it. Anyway, I hope this has been informative and entertaining and interesting, and hope to see you on the next one.
And don't forget to